Climate change. I realize this mic isn't so great, but you'll have to bear with it or not and just not even listen. So you got two choices or more. Likely you have more. Let's get into it. Climate change. Just gonna give my thoughts on the matter. So let's go. I guess let's approach it from the idea of science and history. I guess most people have the idea. I think it's a theory. I don't know if it's proven. It's like, I don't know. But a lot of people conform to the idea of Pangea, and for all intents and purposes, we'll just assume that it is, for the most part, or entirely correct. So what's happened since then? We know that Earth it's not still Pangea, right? It kind of broke up. We have a bunch of continents as a result of that, rather. Pardon me. Yeah, so it's not the same as it used to be, right? And it's a shallow argument, right? Well, it's not like it's not Pangea still. Obviously, the world changes, but obviously there's some truth to that. The only constant is change. We know that. It's again, going back to history, it's the one thing we know historically is that things really do change constantly, and yeah. What's the other term? Constantly, constantly, and consistently, we can expect change. For example, take this town, or not even town. It's probably a barn of some sort. I think back then there was probably a few families to bigger buildings like this, but that's based on nothing. I know in the Great Depression and eras like that, it was more so. It was kind of the case, and even places like England, I know they had a lot of stuff like that. Whatever. That's besides the point. But yeah. This is a testament to change. Look at that town, that little barn, or what have you. It's no longer around, and this is even it's a video game. But yeah, Pangea is not still around, obviously. So let's go back to some of the earliest settlements, because I'm pretty sure people weren't around during Pangea. Alright, whatever. Clearly I don't know too well what I'm talking about. Let's get to this river for my next point. Yeah, I guess one of the earliest settlements was like the people of the Indus River, right? From where, around India, and pretty much a boom of that whole population. And I don't think it's the same ethnic population as it originally was, but that's much besides the point. They started to congregate around tributaries around the Indus River, because as I've heard it phrased, it had the most available calories per acre. And that's a really interesting thought. Maybe keep it in mind, but I don't know if I'll bring it up again. It's just interesting to think about, Life likely is easier in any era you live in a place that has a lot of available calories per acre. A current place that comes to mind is Brazil. Everywhere is just growing stuff, There's just stuff and animals everywhere. There is food in abundance, even though there is also poverty in abundance. But over time, the Indus River tributaries dried up. I don't really know what caused it, but for the sake of this video, just look at this. Maybe there were glaciers up in the mountains. I know it was up in a mountain range, and perhaps there were glaciers up there that all kind of, while they were melting, they produced very fertile tributaries, and over time they kind of all melted up and dried up. So, there's proof that climate change very much is real and is in effect. But there's an example where, it happened and it wasn't humans who caused it. It was just a matter of place and timing, and just happened to happen, right? It was what it was. Sorry, I forgot we're going down here. Let's just set a waypoint and get moving, and I'll just start rambling. I don't know if there's too many other places I want to stop and make points of. But this river was for the sake of the Indus River. Yeah, so they kind of picked up and left. I remember watching that video, the Crash Course History with John Green, right? They were talking, so they picked up for greener pastures. Or, yeah, exactly, right? They're going somewhere where they could get more food. So, yeah, things change, right? Let's look at another example of the Mediterranean. I read somewhere, but then I couldn't find it again, so I guess technically I'm being quoted on here, but I guess the idea is there's many, many sunken cities in the Mediterranean, right? And during my lifetime, there's been a few tsunamis and crazy disasters like that. But we've never lost actual cities to just being swallowed by the sea, right? So if we're going to take and there's other places besides the Mediterranean. There's like sunken cities all over the world. It's just a known fact. You don't have to believe in Atlantis to know that there's other sunken cities that historically existed. So during my lifetime, I've only experienced a couple tsunamis, right? But I've never experienced a full city being taken to the sea. And that's important because I think this whole climate change thing is a bit of a hoax. In that I think crazy disasters and things like that are going to happen. There are more cities probably going to be swallowed by the sea. But I think this kind of fear-baiting and fear-mongering is just that's something else that comes up with this topic, I suppose. I remember when I was younger, and there was Al Gore, and there was all the climate change fear-mongering, and I was worried as a young child. Like, I don't know, it just they said we had 8 years or something. They had, 10 years to make a difference. The point is they're saying the exact same thing with like the same amount of time. Like, it's about that amount of time later. It's 10 years later, whatever. And they're still saying we have 10 years to make a difference. I don't think humans really know the impact we've had on the environment. I know there was that one individual, and I'll look him up for this sake. Inventor. Okay, so I'm not going to deny that humans have done some really bad stuff to the environment. That's the kind of stuff I think we should, really not do. That's the stuff I think we should not do, but, other stuff like eating meat, you could argue it's ethically immoral, but I don't think it's really that much of a bigger picture. There's things like, for example, DuPont, who have contaminated water sources, indefinitely. And individuals such as Thomas Midgley, who invented lead-based petroleum and Freon, I believe. And he's like pretty much the individual most responsible for like the most damage of our ozone. And when we were talking about climate a long time ago, not a long time ago, but when I was a child, or in elementary school, it was talking a lot about the ozone, right? And how this huge hole in the ozone, which, by the way, we know is in repair by now, that's the cause. We're going to get ultraviolet rays and such, and I think the greenhouse effect had something, clearly, yeah, I think the greenhouse effect had something to do with that. So yeah, we got the ozone back in repair, but like the Arctic, for example, I guess there's no landmass as the Arctic, but it looks like all the ice is gone compared to back when they were saying that. I don't think all the ice is, but it's for the most part. There's not too many. There used to be a huge mass of floating ice not all too long ago, within my lifetime probably, right? Here we go. Now we're into greener pastures. So ice ages end and the ice melts, right? And then we have fertile times because there's lots of water, fresh water that came from glaciers and such. This makes for much more fertile land and available calories per acre. It's land fertility is one of the biggest proponents in such an idea. So, with the idea of ice melting and such, and talking about cities being swallowed before, yeah, it'll probably happen. Like, look at cities like Boston or New Orleans, for example. Like, they know they're sitting pretty low. They know they're sitting ducks, right? And that's interesting to me because when it inevitably happens, everyone's going to be saying, well, look, that's your fault. It's your fault, Andrew, you were eating meat and such. Climate change, look, it's here. Well, it's true. Yeah, climate change is here. I think it's pretty similar to when we were blaming ourselves, saying the gods hate us before, when our Mediterranean cities were getting swallowed up by the sea. We'll probably always blame ourselves for weird fucking things, but I don't know if eating meat is specifically the reason Boston's going to go under. I think it might have just been a thing, like it was just going to happen regardless. There's places like California that I'm pretty sure I don't know, I've seen it like a few times on, Discovery Channel. Remember that? Yeah, how, California's going to get split off and a lot of it's going to sink into the sea. And think about where all these climate change people are. All these fucking... excuse my language. All these friggin' celebrities telling me how to live my life in Hollywood. I don't know. This is the issue of climate change that I have the biggest issue with, is the hypocrisy. I have a friend who's vegan and the kind of guy who will go on 2 trips to Thailand a year. We live in Canada. And I think that's kind of appropriate when you're the person preaching that the world's gonna end. We have 12 years to make a difference. Science shows it, right? Because then we really don't have any time to spare. And if you're the one nagging people, or anyone, if you're a celebrity, if you're Leonardo DiCaprio telling me that we gotta fucking change the way we do things, then I don't think, even if you're paying for carbon offsets, that you can really rationalize any of this globe-trotting behavior, I think a lot of the actions should be, people should be really, glorifying home gardens and picking up trash. If the climate is really the change they want to make and for the better, then I power to them. I think that's actually great. It's the I think it's the California style that bothers me. But there's also a lot of cool places in California around Yosemite. You know, there's people who are like genuinely uh, worried in California about the matter. But it does seem to be a cesspool of that kind of thinking, right? That like, well, I'm eating my avocado toast every day, so I'm a vegan. It can't be my fault. And I guess then, you know, most people will be like, haha, that's funny. We all know avocados are actually bad for carbon dioxide because most of them are imported from Southern America or what have you. It's that kind of thing, right? That once you start pointing fingers, it's impossible to like uphold the lifestyle that you yourself are you're trying to promote. And I guess that can even be taken the other way, that I'm saying you should never be a hypocrite, but then it's like it's the same thing. I feel like I'll probably get caught in that at some point, right? But back to climate change, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, climate probably will change, or it is changing, undoubtedly, but I don't know what. If these people, like, if it's really what's believed, people should be taking more serious measures by doing things like learning how to craft boats or tie knots or, you know, the kind of things that'll be important if all of a sudden water levels rise and we have cities swallowed. Because in the case of climate change, that's really one of the biggest existential threats: is rising water levels, mega tsunamis, and to a level, forest fires. That's a big one too. But yeah, just say we lose cities, then where are these people gonna go? Um, I don't think they should just, people can be charitable and give land if they want to, but I think you should also be able to hold whatever land. Like it's a free for all, really, essentially, right? Like, as it's always been with humans and land, kind of. If you're greedy and hold your own, you end up with a lot more in the end, and it's probably the right. Like, it's not like it's a wrong thing to do ethically. It's just protect your land and make sure people don't come in. I guess that's the idea of climate change. Is there will be refugees. People will need homes, right? There'll be mass migrations to different spots of the world. But here's another thing I think about, is that we know that the Grand Canyon used to be a huge lake or sea or something like that. And again, those cities in the Mediterranean are now sunk. So places that are dry used to be wet, and places that used to be wet, or places that used to be dry, are now wet, right? So I wonder if there'll just be a displacement of water. I wonder if at any point especially with the water levels rising, will the Grand Canyon ever fill back up, right? And will we ever see a dry Mediterranean? Will we ever be able to look a bit more closely at these ruins in the water? It's all just interesting for history's sake, but it's also just, I guess it's the idea that climate change is very real. I'm not going to deny it. I'm just saying we haven't seen anything like. You're just kind of a loser if you're if you're really worried about it. Like, if I don't know. Okay, maybe I'm sorry. I phrased that really horribly. I don't know where I'm going with it. Just, I guess, just to be pragmatic about it is just the best, right? It probably will happen, especially again, like I've said, we haven't seen anything too big besides a couple tsunamis in my lifetime. Like odds are, in a human's lifetime, you'll see the minor aspects of climate change, and then within a few generations, you see the grander scheme, right? So and then people are like, oh, I don't want to raise my kids in a world where they won't even be alive because of climate change. That's the funny. Yeah, you see a lot of memes. That's another thing. Oh, like won't even have a future. Greta Thunberg, you stole my future, right? That's the other thing that just gets me like, going and upset because who's to say that's not a future? And like this, you know, the idea of like going back to a better time when kids had green pastures to play in and had nothing but clean air. Like, yeah, that wasn't the reality for a lot of children throughout history and around the world, even into this current day. Is that like people are just used to the cozy, and even myself included, used to the cozy life. And a greater threat of that is honestly probably the thing they're most worried about rather than climate change, right? If there's, I guess that goes to show people are self-interested. Anyway, I don't really know if I had many more points to make. Just thought I'd give an idea, give my thoughts on climate change. I want it to be known that I'm not a climate change denier, but I really think a lot of the stuff that's spouted these days is kind of fear-mongering and propaganda. I think people should live their lives, but also still maybe just learn valuable traits in case things do go a little bit left. And even if they don't, well, hey, you know a few valuable traits that are probably still valuable regardless. You know what? That's all my thoughts on the matter for now. I'll cut this video here. I thought it was fun, though. This is a good first try. Brilliant.